Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another live session. As always, great to be here, and thank you so much for being here. As we warm into it, as always, for anybody who's joining the session, the warm and fuzzies, the you can see me, you can hear me is great. As people come on, I'll mention this a few times, but let me know where you're visiting from, and just kind of understand that any and all questions are on the table today in our downtime. Thanks, Brad, for being my support system and understanding that it's really helpful. So I appreciate it. In our downtime, we'll talk about how to reach your career goals, and that will be again the whole idea here is to set some context, put a little shape behind these lives. But we know that 99% of our time will just be spent doing a Q&A. So let's kind of dive in. If you've been here before, you know I go backwards before we go forwards always. So as we go backwards, really quickly, yesterday's video, it talks about kind of delaying short-term goals for long-term goals. And I thought that that video was really powerful because that's actually a pretty common question. It's something about putting off the timing of what's really easy and what's going to get good results now to really good future results. And so that was just a behavioral Q&A video. So if you haven't had a chance to check it out yet, I strongly recommend that you do. All right, what else do we want to talk about? All right, I don't have the banner up, so that's a fail on my part. So if you are coming into today's session, as always in my live sessions, I do offer just a coupon promo code for both my AI tool and interview mastery course every week. So if you use the coupon code career, that's going to be 20% off the AI tool and or interview mastery course. They work well in combination together, but obviously no pressure. What else? So if this is your first time here, my name is Jeff H. Sipe. My business is practiceinterviews.com. I go live 9 a.m. Pacific time every single Tuesday, and I do new original content every Monday. I keep promising to do more shorts. There's some sort of hiccup in my brain that hasn't allowed me to do that. And that's 100% on me, to just produce more shorts because I know that short form content is something that people really like. Still doing one-on-one practice interviews, one-on-one negotiation coaching, and one-on-one career strategy sessions. That's resume, LinkedIn, networking strategies. As you come into this session today, where you're visiting from, we're really fortunate to have a really awesome lens and a really big global audience. So wherever you're visiting from, just say hello. And then it's not all about questions. There can sometimes be feedback or information that you can provide to the community that's also really helpful. So something else to be thinking about. I also do have a Slack community. So when I'm not live, it's okay to ask questions. One of the items that maybe I'll just mention really briefly here is, obviously I get a lot of questions here in the live where I'm engaged, I'm ready to answer. I get some questions on the Slack community. It's a little slower than it was in COVID times. And on YouTube, obviously, I get a lot of comments, questions, LinkedIn, lots of comments and questions. What's the point? People will often be like, any career advice, or like, how would you help me with X? And it's always helpful. Specificity when asking questions just allows whether it's me or anybody else to provide really great answers, and it's just a communication skill as well, and it's something that we always want to be talking about. So I can see we only have a few comments to start. So why don't we do this? I'm going to warm into this a little bit and wait for some more questions and comments to come in. And so let's just take a few minutes. And Sunil, I'll get to you very shortly, I promise. And just like one other random comment, Sunil added like a couple of comments before I went live. Great. If you don't have the chance to show up live, enter your comments in earlier and I'll get to them and follow them in order in the session. So let's talk about how to reach your career goals. This is kind of like the overarching of the live today. And so, you know, so much of reaching our career goals is we got to put ourselves in a position that's going to set us up for success. And when it comes to career goals, we need to be proactive, but we also need to set up areas and items that are going to allow for people to reach out to us. So, like, one of the best ways to reach your career goals is not as straightforward as you would think. It's LinkedIn. And I know that this is the joke between all of us career content creators is that nobody watches the LinkedIn content, but you're watching me today because of LinkedIn. LinkedIn is what fueled my career path to land in this current position. And is LinkedIn the best tool out there? No, it's not, but it does have a monopoly in the career space. And specifically, they have 1 billion users now. So, like, if we're not putting out our information there, not trying to sell ourselves on LinkedIn, we're not going to reach our career goals. And it's just a really important pause moment. I know LinkedIn isn't exciting. I get it. Like, I totally understand. But the vast majority of profiles, and I would say 99.99% of LinkedIn profiles are not 100% optimized. So let's optimize our LinkedIn profiles. If you're one of the viewers today watching, put aside 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes to just work on it a little bit, because one of the most basic functions of a LinkedIn profile is to think of it like a keyword search. In a keyword search, literally all you're doing is you're copying and pasting your resume bullets into LinkedIn. You will get all sorts of advice of people telling you not to do that. But the alternative is creating this completely different narrative, having to spend all the time trying to figure out, well, what I should put on my LinkedIn versus my resume. Don't overthink it, right? The best thing is let's get those resume bullets into our LinkedIn under each experience. That could be the one action you take today. You're going to show up in more keyword searches and you are going to get hit up more. And that could potentially lead to you achieving better things in your career. And I'll go back to the story that probably too many people have heard too many times, but I was at a corporate recruiting role in 2013 in San Diego. And when I updated and showed that I was recruiting software engineers, it was probably within 3 months that Google reached out to me. If I just hadn't done that simple update and I had said just like recruiting finance and accounting professionals and sales professionals, which was really my focus, no calls, right? But the second I started recruiting software engineers, it was the first thing I did was add it to my LinkedIn profile. And again, all these years later, here we are. So just a huge tip with your career goals, like what we put out in the world will totally benefit us. And again, I know it's not exciting, but simple little steps will make a huge difference. I mean, I think in correlation with your LinkedIn profile, like obviously optimizing your resume is important, but your resume is something that you're going to reach out to people with, as opposed to LinkedIn, where we can kind of sit back and allow people to reach out to us. It's in life, we rarely get these really low hanging fruit moments, these really easy moments to get to our career goals. And it's such a small amount of time for such a huge return on investment. And the same could actually be said for our interview skills. There's never going to be a larger ROI than having good interview skills. So let's talk about it, because we're trying to talk about how to reach our career goals. It's a slow session today. Let's get people warmed up and excited. But I kind of let's use the basketball analogy. First of all, I just use the basketball analogy all the time because I play basketball. The Boston Celtics won last night, which was great for me because I grew up in Boston. And so let's just use the basketball analogy. Let's say I want to be one of those NBA players. Well, I'm going to have to go out and I'm going to have to practice for hours and hours and hours every day for years and years and years. Flip the coin. If we want to reach our career goals, sometimes when we're preparing for a job interview, we just need to practice for maybe 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 hours to make significantly more money. It might be double our money, triple our money. It may be the item that leads us to take one job, and then 2 years later, we practice those interview skills again and we get that next job. I mean, reaching your career goals, the return on investment of interview prep time, and again, that doesn't mean you have to pay somebody like me, but just putting in the work is unbelievable. We just rarely get that big of an ROI in life by having this one single skill. We can dive way more into that. And just as people are coming in, I'm seeing some comments come in. So let's maybe answer a few questions. Anything and everything is on the table. So let's chat through everything. Thanks so much again for being here. Okay. I had the final round on 6/6, and then my recruiter came back a week later, letting me know the position was canceled, but offered to pass my profile on to hiring managers of other open positions. Okay. Okay. And then let's go back to this. Offer to share my profile with hiring managers for any other opening I was interested. Asked if I could be considered for the same role in a different country. I'm waiting on a response. Is this good? Well, yes, in the sense that I always want a recruiter who proactively says they're willing to help. It's also it's also probably an indication that you had a strong interview performance. If they're willing to go above and beyond, it's probably because the feedback is pretty good. Positions getting canceled. This is a little bit more of the new normal. It's a little bit more common than it was in the past. They're getting a little tighter on jobs, and by they, all companies. All companies are getting tighter on jobs. Jobs are getting canceled, deprioritized. Sometimes what we're not seeing is headcount getting transferred. So, like, Sue has a bigger priority than Bob and goes to Bob and says, I really need this headcount. And Bob's like, okay, I don't really need it. Obviously, in those scenarios where you have an identified candidate, that's a much less likely scenario. But just know that this is common. It's good that you have your recruiter working for you. One huge tip is if they are going to put you in front of open roles, do not send them 5 or 10 roles at a time. You're going to overwhelm them. If they're open to putting you in front of roles, send them one role. Send them the job link. Send them 3 to 5 bullets for why you're a fit. Send them your availability, an updated resume, your email, your phone number. Make it as easy as possible for them to get back to you, but just don't overwhelm them. Okay. Good luck. And Brad, thanks always for letting me know the audio and video are good. It's always very, very helpful for me. I appreciate it. Hey, Peter. Hey, Jeff. Thanks for the great content coming from the Bay. Awesome. I was just having a chat with a friend up in San Francisco yesterday and saying how long it's been, and I got to get back up there really soon. You're interviewing for a manager position for a hardware engineering position, and it will be 90% hypothetical questions. Do I mix up the CFAS method so it isn't repetitive? No. No, the CFAS method is a method that's built on a system, so that you should never change the order of that method, because that method is intended to get your audience engaged. If they ever said, whoa, it seems like you're following a method, absolutely, I am. Yeah, I always like to come in, make sure that everything is clarified. I always like to just make sure I'm providing an outline of how my brain is thinking through things. Then I want to make some role specific assumptions so you can see me like I'm in the role. And then, of course, I'm going to deep dive and solve in a couple of critical areas and build really good communication with you. Are they ever going to say that? Like, hey, it seems like you're using a method? Chances are so low, but if they ever called you out on it, you absolutely confirm that you are following a methodical approach to how you answer hypothetical questions. And the reason for this order, first of all, you asked me a question. I don't take anything at face value. I'm going to question everything. That's how I work. That's my default mode. Like, let's question the question. Then the biggest challenge people have when they're answering hypothetical questions is they skip the framework, they skip the outline, and they just throw a bunch of stuff at the interviewer. What the outline does is it gives your interviewer a sense of what are the key areas to focus on so that if you don't hit all of them in depth, they still know that you understand the steps you need to take. And then, of course, assumptions. People will fall asleep if you don't make it role specific and make the assumptions specific. They cannot connect to, I had good food last night while watching a sports game. It's, I had a chicken salad while watching the Boston Celtics win the NBA championship. And that is literally the story from last night. And it's like, okay, now they start to picture the food, they start to picture the game. Even if they don't eat chicken salad, they don't watch basketball, they at least have a sense. So, yes, I know that's a little long winded, but 100% always follow the CFAS method. And the reason why the framework comes before the assumptions is because if the assumptions come before the framework just gets jumbled into this generic solution. And even if you could follow a rigid framework before your solution, the assumptions are forgotten. So when we make assumptions and we roll into that solution, it just plays way better. And I obviously tested that thousands of times to just validate that that's the best way to do it. I hope that helps. I know that was long winded. Hey, Liz, I want to follow up on an application that took considerable effort. 2 essays were required. It's a great fit for my skills and interests. What's the best way forward? Okay. I do not know anyone at the company, and I don't see any second connections on LinkedIn either, though they are a front runner in AI. So you had to fill out an application, and 2 essays were required before you even got an interview, before you even spoke to somebody. Liz, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about those essays because it's very, very critical for everybody watching. You should never do work for a company that, like, first things first, any assessments, essays, any upfront work should be generic and not related to their company, so it could not be reused for their work. And then it's, what is the level of effort? If they're asking for hours of work up front before they'll even consider you for an interview, that's a terrible candidate experience. That kind of scares me a little bit. So okay, yeah, tell us a little bit more. I think that would be helpful. Okay, Sunil, thank you. I appreciate that. Hey, Daphne, thanks for being here as always. The interview was with Google. Okay, yeah. I mean, it's this is like pretty common. Let's just go back just so people can have the context. Um, so you went in, the recruiter let you know that the position, the location was put on hold. Okay. All right. Yeah, it's again just in 2024, we're seeing more positions put on hold across the board. All right. It's just getting more and more common. Okay, Peter, back to you as well. For each framework item, should I make assumptions or after the first framework, just jump into the solution step? Yeah. So, again, one of the biggest challenges I see with frameworks are really hard. So, let's kind of give the context here. I stole frameworks from large consulting agencies like Bain, McKinsey, the Big Four. It's like when they do their case studies, they introduce a framework. And I thought, ooh, this is like a really good idea to give the high level context of my approach. The challenge is that when people talk about goals and objectives, for example, they'll say, okay, we need to start with goals and objectives. We'll be thinking about short term, long term goals, how those goals impact the business. Yeah, goals and objectives. That additional context isn't adding value, it's actually taking away from your answer. A few items we should consider before solving are goals and objectives. We absolutely want to look at the historical data. We want to think about how we're resourced, what's the level of risk, and then working with those key stakeholders to build a shared vision. Let's make a few assumptions. So, you're highlighting that goals and objectives, historical data, resources, risk, and stakeholders, and building that shared vision is how you're looking at the big picture. Then you're going to dive into your grouping of assumptions. And then you could say something like, foundationally, we got to start with those goals and objectives. Is that a good place for us to start? And then you dive in, just focusing in on that area. It's the other beauty of the framework. You don't have to cover every area in significant detail. The challenge is generic. So, what happens, and I'm giving obviously a lot of context here, Peter, and I hope it's helpful. What happens with almost everybody is that they give these super generic, fluffy answers. And all I would say is, I could answer almost all those questions, even though I'm talking to customer engineers and researchers and senior finance managers and like the gamut, right? But I'm not an expert in any of those areas. But I could say, oh, yeah, we'd look at the goals and objectives. We'd start to analyze the short and long term goals. And it's like, that isn't role specific at all. So that's where the assumptions and then the solution we solve for very, very specific items because that gets them to picture us in the job. I hope that helps. Let me know if that's confusing at all. Hey, Trevor from San Jose. Hi to Jeff and everybody. San Jose, my old spot for 5 years. Hi, Saeed. Good to have you here. Thanks for being here. So, should our LinkedIn work experience be one-to-one bullets from our resume, or is there a better format for LinkedIn versus our resume? Not a better format. Bullets are the best format. So the only thing I would say on LinkedIn is like the font is super small on LinkedIn. So if your bullets are typically 2 lines or 3 lines, you can build a space in between each one if that's helpful. So that's just something that I would want you to consider is building in the space. But for building bullets on LinkedIn, there's going to be a function, right? So like for Mac, it's option 8 creates a bullet. And so if you're on a PC, it's something else, but it's something you can easily Google. But yeah, I want it to look like your resume. And again, we're talking about low hanging fruit. More than 50% of LinkedIn profiles don't have bullets in their experience section. More than 50%. It might be more than 70%. It may be even higher than that. How the heck am I going to find you if you don't have all those keywords there? LinkedIn is a keyword search tool. That's how recruiters and hiring managers find you. And it's really easy. It's copy and paste. If anybody hasn't done it, again, who's watching today, spend that 10 minutes. I guarantee in the next month or two, you'll get more hits than you've ever gotten because they just have the keywords to search on. So, where else are we adding those keywords? We're adding them in our headline, we're adding the key skills in our about section. We want to make sure we're hitting on the words as many times as possible. Think about LinkedIn. If you think about it more like LinkedIn instead of LinkedIn, LinkedIn is like Google, as like Google search, then you'll probably treat it a little bit differently. Again, I hope that helps. Hey, Jeff, hope you're well. Saeed here. I share with you already, but it's worth mentioning for motivation and all. Awesome. I've accepted the role. And yes, Saeed was a negotiation client of mine. And yeah, we were able to do some really good work. And I just again, anytime anybody is willing to take their time to come back to the lives and show gratitude, remember, gratitude is just a foundation of having really good interview success. Like if you speak from a place of gratitude, typically you're more liked. And if that person doesn't vibe on gratitude, and especially if it's a hiring manager, hey, maybe it's not the right person to work with, right? Because we don't want to work in the negativity space. That just is terrible. So thank you so much for coming back and sharing with the group. It can be tricky when we're trying to reach our career goals. It's a journey, right? And we're constantly on that journey, whether we're trying to work for a company, whether we're working for ourselves. Our career goals are ever evolving and changing. And so anytime somebody can come back and tell us they've had success, we really appreciate it. So thank you so much for coming back and saying hi. What should I discuss in a skip manager regular meeting? Don't usually know what to say in these. Okay, that's great. First of all, the conversations with skip leads should be, you should be meeting with your skip lead at least quarterly, just to get a pulse. The biggest thing I'm thinking about with the skip lead is I'm thinking about the broader overall goals of the team and up the levels of the organization. I want to confirm with that skip lead that the work I'm doing is really going to achieve the desired results of the higher level goals of leadership. I also always want to understand, not only with my manager, but with my direct lead, if there's anything that they really don't like doing or anything that I can take off their plate that might be helpful for them. And then we're always just looking for some guidance and advice. What are they hearing? Anything that you can work on to improve? Any areas that they see as opportunities to help you drive success? But yeah, we're really doing a goal matching. Like we will really want to understand where we're at from our goals and how they correlate directly to the goals of the larger organization. And then we want to be determining, is there anything we can do to help this skip lead? A lot of times they're just going to say no, but anybody who says, I got this project that I could hand off to you, huge opportunity for you. I hope that helps. I know it's pretty high level, but let me know if you have more questions. I have a few resumes for different roles, so not always sure how to best bullet my LinkedIn experience versus various resumes. More generic. So this is where I really believe everybody should have one shell resume. It's one go-to resume that's just generic. It's your generic skills, generically what you did, and then we should have the sales specific one, the program management specific one. Obviously, the specific resumes by the specific role where you're matching the summary section to the job description. But just get those bullets in there. Whatever it is, just a more generic, maybe you're coupling or grouping those together. But yeah, like it also could be a little bit about like what's your intent? Are you really more focused again, like going towards sales? Then maybe that's the information. Or are you really more focused towards program management? Is that the direction you want to go? So I think you can prioritize based on that. Again, with a copy and paste, just get something in there, because something's going to be better than nothing. But yeah, I prefer like your shell resume to be generic and then more specific resumes based on job descriptions. But of course, if you have all those resumes already, no reason to like break the system. Thanks for answering. Lastly, does Google measure success against specific leadership principles like Amazon? Oh boy. This is kind of the funny one. Google does have leadership principles. I would say that if you were to ask 100 Googlers to name those 10 leadership principles that they have, 99% would not get them right or not know them. It's not as big of a focus as it is at Amazon. So there are certain principles that they're looking for, but in reality, like spending time saying, and I was really bold in this specific case, or I really dug deep in this specific case, a couple of the tricks that you can use with the Amazon interviews, not really as necessary with Google, in my opinion. But they don't really like match up and say, like for principle X, were they a fit? It's a little bit more of casting a wider net and just seeing overall fit. Hey, Jeff. I've been watching you since the birth of your channel. Oh boy. Thank you so much for your content and dedication. I've learned a lot and landed an offer with Apple after 12 interviews. Okay, first of all, amazing. Apple is a great company. And of course, like just great opportunities and then compensation over time. They're as good as any company in the world. Secondly, when people say since the birth of my channel or they've watched all my videos, I mean, I freak out a little bit. I mean, again, I think we were talking about this last week. Anybody can go in and watch those early videos. They're pretty terrible. But it's still the stuff I talked about then. I haven't changed how I think. Obviously, my coaching and my advice has evolved, but the early videos are go watch the first video. I mean, you can watch, it's pretty gnarly. But again, I keep it up there because it's just part of the journey. And it's something that for anybody, again, I always go back to this for anybody looking to create a YouTube channel or TikTok or start doing reels or whatever you want to do, like the first videos aren't going to be good. The only thing you can do is just shoot those bad videos and get better and better over time. That's all it is. This is not, it's not an area where like you're just going to be perfect the first time around. You just got to get in there and do it. But thanks for letting us know and really excited for you. Congrats. 12 interviews is a lot. What is your opinion on open to work on your profile picture on LinkedIn? I am not a gray on this at all. It's a 100% yes. I will be pretty critical of anybody who advises against it. It's their assertions for why it doesn't work are ridiculous and not really founded, in my opinion. Again, this is my opinion, but I always recommend using the open to work banner. It's low hanging fruit. It makes it easier for me to assess whether you're open to communication or not. You've removed a barrier. That's it. If you're truly open to work and you are looking for a job, that means your LinkedIn background photo should say the types of roles, the locations, have your contact info. You should have your resume embedded into your LinkedIn profile. Like there's a bunch of things to do, but the open to work banner, yeah, absolutely. I'm a 100% fan, and you'll see like recruiters are anti it and hiring managers are anti it. That's really just not a true statement. That's all made up and fluff, and a lot of people post on that on LinkedIn to be controversial, but it's the one of the funniest topics on LinkedIn. Honestly, people are want to make it a controversy. There is no controversy. Like if I'm hiring, I'm going to use the hiring banner. If I'm open to work, I'm going to use the open to work banner. Why? Because we're not trying to hide data from our preferred audience. We want to tell them everything up front, make it easier on them. Not telling them you're open to work makes it harder for them to determine whether they should reach out or not. We want to remove any barriers to entry. Okay, we're at the 30s. I'm going to take 30 seconds to just hit on my services really quickly. If you use the coupon code today, career, it's 20% off of our AI tool. That's all of our product offerings and 20% off the interview mastery course. I should mention on the AI tool, we are going to be condensing the package options, and the lifetime package is definitely going away. So if you did want to use the promo code on the lifetime package, we're probably going to get rid of that in the next couple of weeks. I haven't come to a final date on that, but just an FYI. And then obviously still getting great feedback on the course a couple of years later. Still doing one-on-one interview coaching, one-on-one negotiation coaching, and one-on-one strategy sessions, resume, LinkedIn, and networking strategies. I go live 9 a.m. Pacific time every Tuesday and new original content every Monday. If you like what I'm doing today, smash that like button. If you've never subscribed, consider subscribing. All right, let's get right back to it. All right, let's see. I lost my spot here. Okay, cool. All right, Robin. Hey, Jeff, thank you so much for the content. Just a quick question. Do you know if Google Online Challenge is used in Dublin for an account strategist exchange role? Online Challenge. If you can let me know what you mean by online challenge. I haven't seen anything unique for account strategists. This is like very straightforward. You have to take that initial assessment, speak with the recruiter, and then for any account strategist role, including the engage roles, it's just going to be 3 interviews: an RRK, a GCA, and a GNL interview. But online challenge, I'm not as familiar with that. Maybe you can tell me more. Hey, Jeff, my recruiter gave me an update. Oh, okay, here we go, Gary. For the DC tech role, they're waiting for the hiring manager to open new positions and then complete the approval process. Still on hold, staying positive. Yeah, Gary, stay positive. Sometimes this just takes a little bit of time. Obviously, like the biggest thing for you is, first of all, communication. Like, just make sure you're staying in close communication with your recruiter. And then I want you to like be maybe pre-planning to make that move. Start looking at some of the spots in Ohio that you might move to, like what's the cost, etc. Just start getting a feel for it so that like you've made all the mental decisions you need to make if you are to reload from Maryland to Ohio. And yes, I did remember that 2 weeks in a row. I feel good about my brain. So but yeah, just keep us posted, please. And thanks for continuing to come back. And just know that like the approval on all these roles, again, we can go to Google or other companies. It's just the approval process, more positions getting put on a hold. Like that's our current economy, right? That's more of a reflection of what's going on in the overall landscape as opposed to just saying it's like one company versus another. So you staying positive and continuing to show up here, which we love, is great. Just continue to keep us posted. And obviously, I'm here to help if you need it. essay 2 to 400 words about why you want to work at the company. Okay, that's fair. Essay 2, describe an innovative or experimental project related to the specific role that you're proud of. Okay, so this is very um, this is more like role related and behavioral. So I would say that um, yeah, I would say that this is not something that I would take off. I wouldn't say that this is inappropriate. Took effort and time simply because I'm a perfectionist and I really want the role. So I crafted my responses carefully, hit about 383 and 360 words for each, was happy with what I wrote. So Liz, the other tip and trick is like again, if you get any of these essays, you can use my AI tool to return that response now with the ideal answer. We can say what's the ideal answer. And then if that ideal answer is too long, we can always go back and put it into ChatGPT and have it get it a little bit leaner. But just a tip and trick if you get anything like that in the future. I had an interview with Google and currently waiting for their feedback. Have been going through your various video. Perhaps you could add a coffee chat topic as well. It was an interview, but I feel okay. So I did have that. Oh, sorry. I did do a video on that topic. It's called informal interview, and it's actually got like a picture of like coffee cups on it. So anytime you want to look up any content for me, I think that again, sometimes just like YouTube as a search tool that you can just go into my channel and type in informal interview, or you can always type Jeff H. Sipe and coffee chat or and informal interview. But I definitely did a video on that and hopefully it helps. But the biggest thing there is to be prepared for anything, treat it like a real interview, and then ask fantastic questions. What do you love about the company, the role, the team? What's the coolest thing you're working on? Like, make it really about them. They'll like you more. Hey, Cliff, Eagle, Idaho. Amazing. Idaho is still one of the states in the US I have never been to. So, definitely on my bucket list, though. It looks beautiful. I only mentioned the effort part to share that they might need more time to evaluate all the parts of applications. Okay. Interestingly, you also had to sign a form that said you would not use AI to respond so they could see how you write and think. So I hope they do the same, review it all personally. Um, I wouldn't expect that. And I honestly think that, just my 2 cents and my gut reaction to that is that's obnoxious. Like, don't give me all this work to do up front before you'll even speak to me and then tell me how I can and cannot put together that information. I just think that's totally ridiculous. And by the way, like, here's the thing, like, there actually are systems and programs that can read whether you've used AI or not. I use AI all the time, but I don't actually use what like GPT says. I use it just as a tool to say, oh, wow, like I wouldn't have considered X area. So that's something I want to talk about. Maybe I'll run it through the system a few times. And I'll say, okay, like, yeah, maybe I want to touch on this or touch on this, but I'm not actually using their script verbatim because it doesn't really actually sound real. If you've ever used ChatGPT for writing, for example, or any generative AI tool, you'll know it's kind of it overspeaks, it overstates. It just doesn't sound 100% real. I don't know if that makes sense, but I just think it's do all this upfront work, but don't do this and don't do this, and maybe we'll get back to you. I don't like that. And I don't really agree with those essays overall. I think it's silly. And then, like, who's doing all this work? If they get 1,000 applicants, are they really going to read through all those answers? They're absolutely not going to. So, um, I don't like all the upfront work. I think they're wasting candidates' time. Sometimes what organizations will do is they'll use this as a test. They'll use this as an opportunity to knock people out who won't do the work. So yeah, I don't love it. I passed my hiring assessment and received a referral. What should I look for in the next hiring process? Well, If you pass the hiring assignment and received a referral, the next step would be hearing from a recruiter, which is not always guaranteed when you pass the assessment. It's not always guaranteed when you get referred, but that's the likely next step. And then, depending on the interview process, you'd hear from the recruiter, and then depending on the role, there would be a certain number of interviews. If you want to bring in more data, I can definitely give a slightly more specific answer. Okay, none of your videos were horrible? Oh my goodness. That's amazing. It brought me 2 offers, one from Google and one from Amazon. Thank you. Well, thank you so much. I mean, the first video is pretty bad. But again, I'm pretty critical, but the one thing I did do was like I've told this story a million times, so I don't want to spend too long on it, but I saw a YouTube video for Tell Me About Yourself, and it had 10 million views, and it was the worst video I had ever seen. So I thought I could shoot a better video. I was living in Maui at the time. I went on to my windy lanai, and it was just terrible. I was snotty, like a million things were going wrong, but I shot it. And then from there, now I've shot 450, right? And so, like, again, it's just an opportunity. I love content creation. It's not easy, it's hard work, but I just recommend it to anybody. Um, it's a super interesting journey. But thank you so much for coming and letting us know. Um, Let us know which one you picked. Curious. Jeff, I can't thank you enough for your content and your interview mastery course. Awesome. I got my second Google interview coming up, and the recruiter kindly agreed to give me a month to prepare. Okay, so you're also setting up a mock interview. How do I take advantage of the mock interview? And is there any tip or trick on planning for that interview? No. The fact that they gave you a month is good. Like, I just wouldn't push it out anymore. Like, we got to put some time constraints and time pressure to have successful interviews, right? So that's really important. But in that mock, it's just one of the pieces that I always try to emphasize is even like the mock interviews that they set up there. Um, the person who's doing it probably isn't like an interview expert per se. And so, like, I just don't want you to get away from following the methods. So, follow a STAR method for behavioral questions, follow CFAS, right, for hypothetical questions, and just take in that data and information. But just remember, the goal of a successful interview is understanding our audience, and all the ways that I've set up that coaching are to provide very simplistic and straightforward context to build understanding with our audience so that ultimately they understand how we got to those results, how we got to those solutions, etc. So um, I've just found that a few of those mock interviews mess people up a little bit and give like differing opinions and advice, but remember, everybody's lens is valuable. And so you do want to do as many practice interviews as you possibly can before the interviews. Hope that helps. Hey, Jeff, thanks for all you've helped me out with. Okay, questions. What questions do I ask in a panel interview? I've already asked one of the most recommended, i.e., coolest projects. Okay, all right, Matthew. Okay, so also, how should I prepare? Um, well, Okay, so when we have a panel interview, I might need a little bit more data here. Okay, asked in a panel of 3 interview. What questions do I ask? So you may want to engage with a question of taking the data that was introduced to you, look for what's engaging the audience, and then you might say at the end, you could say, Sue, Bob, and Jane, I really enjoyed the question about X, and I want to throw that back to each one of you. Let's start with you, Sue. How do you feel about Y pertaining to that item? So we want to look for everybody's input in regards to maybe one specific question, maybe build off of the conversation a little bit. That's one way to tackle it. Um, we still want to make sure, yeah, like if we found out all we need to know about those people, great. But like, it could be, just going back and saying, I've asked these questions before, but one of the things I would love to hear from each one of you is like, what's something that you think is really exciting about the organization that I might not know? And I'd love to hear it from each one of your unique lenses. We just want to create really, really good engagement. Remember, with panel interviews, I know a lot of stuff is still remote, but anytime now, if we're going back into the office and dealing with a panel interview, we address the person who we're speaking to, and then we come here, and then we're here. And we want to make sure that we are really connecting with the person who's asking the question. We don't want to totally disregard this person, but we're directed here, and then we bring the other two back in. Um, Again, I don't know how much physical interviews are happening now. It seems very, very limited still. Impressive memory. Yeah, thanks. Also, I was curious about two things. Would you go back to work at Google, and have you worked your dream job yet? Oh, Gary, two great questions. So would I work for Google again? Like really transparently, absolutely not. And the only reason is I wouldn't work for any company ever. I have made that decision, and I made that decision back in February of like 2018, that I was never going to work for anybody. So it's just like it's an absolute no, because I think once you get in kind of the mindset I'm in, you understand that working for yourself has the biggest risk and the biggest opportunity. And then, no, I think the second answer, if I'm being fully transparent, I mean, I think that my real dream job is actually slightly removed from interviewings and career, and definitely removed from Google. And it's to teach more overall and broad communication skills. So that's actually, well, it's a combination. And I know I'm going on a little tirade here, but my actual dream job is a combination of doing more communications based work, and then coupling that with much more nonprofit work. Obviously, there's a ton of work to do in so many nonprofit areas, especially in California. Really, like, my future state, once I'm done with this interviewing stuff and I have a full roadmap and plan to exit this business and start a new business, but that would shift more to like a minimum 50%, probably about 75% nonprofit and 25% communications coaching and training. But nonprofit's like kind of the dream job, and that's something that I've had in my mind since I graduated college. It's just working towards that because I want to be financially free before I take that step. Thanks for asking. I appreciate it. Google's online challenge is a timed online challenge. Google's online challenge is a timed online challenge. Google gains a better understanding of your skills while providing insight into our hiring process. Looks like it's similar to a GCA. I don't know anything about this. The only thing I know is that there's a timed Google hiring assessment, but this challenge for account strategists, I'm not familiar. I just haven't heard of it. And I actually coach more account strategists than probably any other role. So it's just a little surprising, unless it's new or unless we are actually talking about the GHA. Hey, Liz, as always, thanks for your feedback. Getting back to the original question, how do I follow up, or should I just forget about it? Hard to follow up on an application. That's one of the reasons why I really don't like applying. Look, I get it. It's low hanging fruit. It's just a part of reaching our career goals is applying. And sometimes you just need to apply because you will get jobs that way. People get jobs that way all the time. Right. But um, I don't know the best way to follow up unless you are able to potentially identify the hiring manager or recruiter and reach out to them. Again, I think I want to continue to reference like just doing really good Google searches, and then contact out. Contact out. If you just sign up for contact out and you go into LinkedIn, it's a widget that you can build in. And maybe widget is a very old term, but you can build it into your LinkedIn profile, and they'll give you 4 or 5 free pieces of like free content, phone number, email addresses, etc., per day. And so that can be a great way to just go around LinkedIn and email them directly. So that's a strong recommendation. But yeah, that's the trick with the trickiness of applying is that, yeah, we're not always going to hear back. Okay. Also, giving my first Google interview last month and scheduled for the second month, I noticed they don't share interviewer details. How do they select or bring in an interviewer? Do they have a pool? Yep, it's exactly what they do. They have a pool of interviewers that typically will be pretty role adjacent or within the role. So they're either the hiring manager, they're a direct team member, a collaborative team member. They're pretty close to the business, and it's a pool of interviewers. And then they bring them in, and they do not. Sharing interviewer details is really recruiter specific. It's not that they have a policy against it. I didn't do it. Some recruiters will. I don't think it helps as much as people think it does. I think sometimes it can cause us to change our approach or our answers. So it really is recruiter dependent on whether they share those interviewer details or not. But yeah, it's absolutely a pooled approach. That's correct. Hey, Daphne. Okay, if G only allows 3 jobs per month, should I tailor each resume for each application, or do we use one generic resume for all applications? Wondering if they refer back to your resume and your account specifically, or what is submitted per application. Um, yeah, it's usually maybe like more of a generic approach, but I still strongly recommend catering your resume per job. And it's not, don't change anything in the experience or education or skills section. It's just the summary section. Throw your resume, job description into ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, Llama, whatever you prefer, and just say, create 5 resume bullets based on my resume and the job description. And then you can play around with it and tweak it. But yeah, I recommend a specific resume for every single job. Hey, Jeff, thanks for everything you would do. What would be a good anchor for an L6 product manager tech position, Amazon, LA? Okay. So, product is really hot, right? So, like, you're not gonna make maybe as much as like a Google product manager, um, but anchoring wise, I mean, I'm probably anchoring. I feel like LA product manager, Amazon, you're gonna make probably around 400 ish total comp year one. Obviously, theirs is a more of a flat 4-year model. It's kind of weird how that plays out, whether the first 2 years are higher, last 2 years are higher. The negotiation is obviously going to be on the equity portion. They're going to give you a number of shares, and then the year 1 and 2 sign on bonuses. I'd probably be anchoring in the high fives. I don't want you to not go higher than that if you want to look up the data. I haven't really done a I've done a ton of negotiations for Amazon, but I haven't had a recent product manager. I'd really be curious to see how those are comping, but I would imagine probably again, L6 Amazon product manager, you can probably push that up to about 400. So that would make me think that you should be anchoring into the mid to high fives. Um, with Amazon, just remember their tone can be a little different. This is crazy. We're going to rescind. We would never do this. This is a director level salary, blah, blah, blah. Amazon doesn't rescind offers. Be gracious and kind. And obviously, if you need help with the negotiation, I am here to help. This will be a tricky one. Product is really hot. So you want to, again, just make sure that you're really driving that offer up as much as you possibly can. Jeff, is sending 1 to 2 jobs per week to the recruiter for a referral too much? Would they get annoyed if they have previously offered to help? How would you phrase that email? 1 to 2 weeks, probably a lot. I would do like one every couple weeks, maybe one a week. I'm always when I want to get referred, I'm always giving the direct link. I'm always including bullets for like why I think I'm a fit. Even with a refer, I'm always providing my availability if they have any questions about my application, all that stuff. Um, but how would I phrase that email? With our referrers, we should just I want you to understand the relationship and push accordingly. But yeah, I want the link. I want reasons for why you're a fit, and then anything that you think might be helpful for them. Contact info, updated resume, availability, anything that they may need. But phrasing the email is really relationship dependent, I think. Okay. Can you share more details on the offer creation process? Who is suggesting the first number from the company side, HM, comp team, etc.? Based on which factors can the number vary? Okay, so I'm going to throw this right back at you, Alex. Um, what company are we talking about? Right. If you have this specific company, it's going to be very, very different by company. So if you can just provide the company, I can definitely provide some context. Okay, thank you, Jeff. I heard it was newly introduced in 2024, but if you're training account strategists a lot, it seems like it's not relevant for the role. That's what I needed to hear. I do not believe that what you're getting is role specific, but you can always double check on that, right? I haven't heard of that. And yeah, I do like account strategists and customer engineers, whatever, for whatever reason. Those have been the two really biggest for me as clients. But I coach a ton of account strategists, and nobody's referenced this. It doesn't mean that it isn't happening. But yeah, I hope that helps. I don't have all the info, of course. Typical tenure at FANG companies is usually about 3 years. What's your career advice for getting promoted, avoiding burnouts, layoffs, changing companies, etc.? So, so like, let's say you take the job at Google, for example. Um, you take the job at Google, like, well, they've optimized for the first 2 years, right? So, what does that mean? You're going to get 70% of your equity in the first 2 years. Maybe you get a sign on bonus. You've gotten the relocation. So, really, I'm looking at it as a 2-year model. Like, if I'm still happy at 2 years, great. But I could also start looking outwards there. And like, just in general, I'm going to make moves. If I'm going to work for somebody else, I'm going to move because I'm going to make more money that way. Now, career advice for getting promoted is all about manager alignment. And this is not just Google, this is any company. We don't get promoted if we're not talking about it. So, our manager is Jane, and we say, Jane, I'm really interested in getting promoted this year. Here are the three, and this can be very, very specific at Google. They show you, and you will have access to the information of what it looks like and what you need to be achieving at the next level. So you could say, hey, Sue, based on the leveling rubrics, I'm seeing that probably I need to achieve A, B, and C this year to get promoted. Can we work on a plan and make sure that I'm aligned and working on the items I need to work on to get promoted this year? Coming up with the plan with your manager is the best way to get promoted. Otherwise, we're just taking it out of our hands and we need to take control. Burnout, that's all about you. I was definitely a churn and burn. I worked a lot of hours, and but I also have an incredible capacity to just work a lot. And I don't have kids, so I have more flexibility, right? So like there's things that play into that, but I can just work. That's not the thing for everybody. So to avoid burnout, just create really good systems and processes. Like, I'm only going to check email at these times. I'm going to work on my most significant projects first. A lot of that can be understanding your zones. So for me, like, your green is your best zone. My green zone is in the morning. I'm definitely the best in the morning. Hit that lunchtime, I start to hit yellow. Like mid afternoon, I'm at red. And then usually in the evening, I'll get back to green. And so, like in green, I can get some stuff done at nighttime, but understanding your zones, do your most productive work in your zone of genius. And if that happens to be the morning, for example, that's when you want to do it. But I would just say, I I think we're all working like, yeah, there's like passion and enjoyment. Of course, those things are important. But ultimately, when I look at work, there's only one goal. It's financial freedom. And so financial freedom means you have enough money where you don't ever have to work again. Right. And so like changing companies usually leads to more money, which means you can retire earlier and you get that financial freedom. Now, financial freedom and retirement do not always have to be combined, but it's just something you should always be working towards. And so that's kind of the way I look at it. That's my mindset. Thanks, Jeff. Do you recommend changing job title to match position title? As long as it's close enough. I always tell the funny story. I was working back at this company in San Diego in '08, and they gave me the title of concierge team lead. I was just an analyst team lead, but they wanted it to be concierge because I was taking care of these CEOs, these like big CEOs. It's a long story, won't get into it, but um, I would never put that on my LinkedIn profile or on my resume. I'd put that on a job application, but not in those places because it didn't make sense. I was leading a team of 6 analysts, so as an analyst lead, like right. So we just want to make sure it does match and it's close enough. But just on the applications, always the exact months and always the titles. We never want to mess around in that area. Okay, companies like Google and Amazon. Okay, so um, I'm just coming back to this for a second, Alex. Let me get back to what you asked. More details on the offer creation process. Who suggested the first number from the company side? Okay, so let's take Google for example. Your recruiter, Jeff. Here's what I can do. I can go into G Hire, which is our applicant tracking system, and I can pull an offer for you. It's going to be the worst offer I can give you. What does that mean? It's just a baseline offer, lowest base, lowest equity, bonus is always the same, no sign on. I can give you that offer. That's what I'm approved to give you. To escalate that to the next level, it's just the compensation team. So it's the compensation team and recruiter working together. So that's why at Google, anchoring high is so important. Hiring manager, skip manager, they're not involved unless you're in an escalation case. That's very, very rare. Now at Amazon, this is more of a team-based decision. So team gets together, they approve you, and then the hiring manager is going through the numbers and working with the recruiter to get you the appropriate offer. So it's a different system. Hiring managers more engaged and attached to the offer than they are at Google. And then we go to these other companies. Usually they're more team-based decisions. They happen in smaller buckets than Google, where it's this overall approach. Could argue for or against any of those approaches, but that's a really, really high level of how it works. I hope that helps. And I wanted to thank you again for the content and guidance you provide. You bring a different perspective and excellent suggestions for improvement and success. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for being here. Um, yeah, I really enjoy the lens that I'm able to provide. And I think people provide all these unique lenses. And yeah, of course, I think my content is good, but I only know that I've gotten to this place because of this community. Without all the one-on-one client work, without all the questions, without all the probing and all the discussions, there's no way I improve. And so it's because of this great community that I've been able to get to this point where I think I can provide tremendous value. And that's why I think my content over time continues to get better because it's based on more and more and more data. But thank you so much for that kind comment. Jeff, your lives are incredibly helpful, and thank you for your full transparency. I think in this lives, like one of the joys, I talk about this with my wife sometimes, is that like I am pretty much my authentic self here. There's nothing to hide. I'm here to help the community. I have what I consider to be an incredibly grateful and positive tribe, meaning I have built a community of people who tend to lean and be very positive, very gracious, very kind. Watch this whole live. Look at how many nice people came into this session. So it makes this part really enjoyable, but I'm totally transparent with me, my life, everything. And I hope that um, I don't know. I hope that helps. I'll just bring it up anyway. But yeah, these lives have changed quite a bit. I think probably I was a little tighter, more rigid when I first started doing them. But now that I've been doing them for years, I feel pretty comfortable and confident. And I will share to an extent, right? But thank you for that. I appreciate it. And continue to keep us updated, Gary, on what's going on with you. Thanks, Jeff. It's a Zoom interview, but I did have one in person yesterday, 4 hours straight with 4 people. That's just candidate experience. Like you can't do a 4 hour straight interview and like they're basically setting you up to fail because our brain is only good in short stints. And that's been scientifically proven. 4 hours is just crazy. That is a total leadership fail from a talent acquisition standpoint. No company should ever do that. Look, if you're excited about the company, And we're not going to really like spend all of our time knocking their HR process, but 4 hours straight with 4 people is absolutely insane. Thank you. I didn't know that the recruiter was able to make the initial offer without approval from the comp team. They are, but that offer is not a good offer. It's the baseline, meaning that the reason why they can give that offer is because it has the lowest approvals level of approval from a base and equity perspective. So anyone who accepts that initial offer from the recruiter has left a ton of money on the table. So if the recruiter comes first and they're like, here are the numbers, just know that those numbers are low. Then I hear a lot of times people will reach out to me and say, hey, Jeff, like I'm thinking about your negotiation services, but I'm pretty happy with what the recruiter offered. And it's like, whoa, you can't be happy with that. We got to go for 3 or 4x the equity. We got to try and add, ask for 30 or 40K more on the base, even though they're not going to give it to us. We got to ask for a sign on. Like any recruiter offer from Google it's really not a good offer. So you really got to push on those. Regarding the interview, it's with Amex. Okay. I might just be nervous, but I don't know how to keep the convo going. I'm thinking like, dang, I already asked this in our first one-on-one interview. Yeah, I mean, again, you can always probe on those initial questions, Matthew, and say like, hey, like, I know we talked a little bit about what you enjoyed about the company or what you enjoy about your role, but now that I've gotten a better chance to meet you and talk with you, I want to dive a little bit deeper. Again, it's what we talked about before. Take that previous data and information and use it as an opportunity to probe in areas where maybe you didn't have that data and information before. All the science and data, it's all backed by one fact. The more people talk about themselves, the more they like you. If everybody understood this data point, then everybody would be more likable. I mean, my default mode is questions, engagement, listening, and it increases my likability. And it's not anything other than I am using a tactic. But I mean, in general, I am curious. I already know about myself. It's not that interesting to me. So I'm much more curious and interested to learn about others. So it is kind of my natural default mode as well. But I definitely want to ask about them and learn about them. And it is one great opportunity to also check them. They're like, oh, it's pretty good. It's okay. Like the company's okay. Like, yeah, some of the team's good, some of the team's not good. It's like, whoa, this person's being negative and transparent with me up front before I'm even joining. It's a huge red flag, right? So it's also an opportunity to not just get them talking so that they like us, but here, if their answers have positivity, if they're negative, again, it's a huge flag. Reflect. I want you to just go back and reflect just a couple of data points with each interviewer. I know it was a lot. You had to take on a lot, but just try to reflect and see if there's anything you can come up with. Because again, those probing questions will be helpful. Okay. We are out of questions. I'm definitely happy to keep going. Any additional questions that come in, I'll answer them, but let's just go into wrap-up mode. And again, more comments, more questions, happy to answer them. Today, coupon code CAREER, 20% off of our AI tool and our interview mastery course. I will quickly note on the AI tool, at 20% is off on all of our packages. We're going to go to more of a 2-option model. We have 4 options, including the lifetime package. That lifetime package is going away. It's not a good SaaS model, but we wanted to open it up and give that opportunity because we're a newer product in the market. But as we're approaching 4 months in market, it just doesn't make sense to have that product in market anymore. So if you want to hop on that 20% discount on that package today or any of those packages, you can. Again, I think maybe a couple more weeks, and we'll give a serious heads up before we actually stop offering that specific service. Still getting great feedback on the interview mastery course, 20% off. I actually did drop the price on that course. So 20% off now is actually getting it to a lower price point. I just wanted to recognize that the course is older. I still think everything in there is 100% valuable, but I did bring the price down a little bit, just an FYI. Still doing one-on-one interview and one-on-one negotiation coaching. And lastly, one-on-one strategy sessions. That's resume, LinkedIn, and networking strategies. I go live 9 a.m. Pacific time every single Tuesday, new original content every Monday. If you like what I did today, smash that like button. If you've never subscribed, consider subscribing. I am going to answer these last couple of questions and hop off. Thank you again so much for being here. Thank you, Jeff. Always great to see you. Always great to have you here, Liz. Matthew, thank you so much. All my interview success pretty much has been from your advice. All your interview success has been from your hard work, right? From you putting in the time and effort. I'm just a small piece of the puzzle to give you a little bit of guidance, but really it's a credit to you and anybody else who gets the job. I can give a little bit of guidance, but you actually have to take that guidance and apply it, which is the most difficult part. So really pat yourself on the back. Can you talk a little bit about refreshers, Jeff? Is it rare to get and how to get them? Yeah, let's talk about refreshers. So refreshers at any company are typically baked into their compensation model, meaning that they give you a large equity grant up front, and whether that's Google's model 38, 32, 2010, or like Apple's model of 25% per year, whatever it might be, refreshers are built into the model so that after 4 years, your comp doesn't all of a sudden fall off of a cliff, right? So the way refreshers work at like a company like Google is basically you just need to have worked the previous calendar year, and then they'll be part of kind of the bonus process. So you get your bonus early in a calendar year. You also get refresher grants. How do refresher grants work? They're typically also 4-year grants. So at a company like Google, they're 25% per year. The thing about refreshers is you have your initial grant here, and then you have your refresher grant, but every year you get a refresher grant. So what's happening is, again, you're not falling off that cliff. You have grant on top of grant on top of grant, which can make years 3 and 4 really big from a compensation perspective. So I always tell people my full 4th year comp was awesome, but my refreshers weren't really going to hold me up. So when I went into my 5th year, I was actually going to make less money because my performance hadn't really aligned. And so my refreshers hadn't kept me up. So if I had stayed, I would have made less money in 2018. This was all strategic, right? I knew I was going to stay. I was going to wait till I got paid my bonus. Once my bonus hit my account, I was not retiring. I was going to resign. And that was my plan. And I built that plan in all along, but refreshers are meant to keep you up. I actually did a video on this very recently on my YouTube channel, and it should walk you through how refreshers work. So just type in Google refreshers. It's just one example of how one company does it, but definitely take a look at that video. It's pretty recent in the last few months. Thanks, Trevor, always for being here. Thanks. Does this mean that the first offer will always be the recruiter baseline offer? If not, how can we know if that's a strong offer? We might not want to negotiate too much to seem greedy. Well, you can ask. You can always ask, like, hey, have you been working with a compensation team? Is this your own offer? If we don't know what the company said it is, we can say, I want to understand your negotiation philosophy. So we can find out their philosophy. But you want to go baller, but you also have to be careful. You always have to understand what is that company's negotiation philosophy. Otherwise, you can get an offer rescinded. I just want you to be really careful in that aspect. Hey, Daphne, thank you for the great content. Tremendous value as always. Appreciate you sharing your knowledge. I appreciate everybody here. Really hope it was helpful. Alex, coming back to you. If you have any follow-up questions, just YouTube comments or in the Slack community, just to make sure I've rounded that out for you. Thank you, everybody, so much for being here. I'll be back next week. Thanks so much.